Stephen, welcome to the show. Can you please explain to us why calories are worthless?
Are we going straight into that question, are we? Right. Oh, yeah, I can do that. If we look at what calories actually are, what are they? Well, they're a man-made or a human-made measurement of heat. Okay. So they originally started because they wanted to get steam trains and see which fuel was the most efficient. So they would burn different types of fuel and see which fuel gave the most heat energy. Okay. And they called that a calorie. And we also have kilocalories. When you look at a liter of water, and this is an experiment we can do at home, and you can prove this, you can prove calories are pointless when it comes to weight. Okay. A kilocalorie is based on the fact that a calorie, you increase 1 gram of water by 1 degree centigrade. So a kilocalorie is 1 liter of water by 1 degree centigrade. Okay. Now, 1 liter of water happens to weigh 1 kilogram. That's when they set up all the metrics. They did that deliberately. So I've now got my liter of water in my kettle, and it's room temperature. And I can heat it, let's say by 80 degrees. Let's say room temperature is 20 degrees, and I can raise it up to 100. To get there, from that calculation we just talked about, I'm going to need 80 kilocalories. All right, that will definitely happen. That kettle will put 80 kilocalories into that liter of water. And at the end of it, when you put 80 kilocalories in, it will still weigh a kilogram. It will still weigh a kilogram. So you put 80 calories into this thing and you haven't increased the weight. That's because heat does not weigh anything. Now, I know you can get even more scientific and you can talk about photons and stuff like that, but let's keep it really basic. So we're talking about heat here. So you heat the water up, but the weight doesn't go up. Okay. And you can then let it cool. So you can take 80 calories or 80 kilocalories out of that liter of water, and it will still weigh a kilogram. Now, a kettle, everyone will say, well, yeah, but what about the steam and the water vapor and all that? Well, that's why you have a bomb calorimeter. You can completely enclose this so you don't have those problems. So that's what a calorie is, all right? So we're talking about getting something, setting fire to it, and raising the temperature of water, which obviously is nothing like eating. So that's one way of looking at calories or kilocalories, and that's facts, basically. That is calories in, calories out, making no difference to weight, because heat does not weigh anything. The other thing you can also look at is...
Sorry to cut you off. So basically, if you can take something so simple like that and then apply it to the human, and so it doesn't even work in that scenario, then to expect it to be any kind of reliable data at all when it comes into body composition into a human body, I mean, that's a million times more complicated, infinitely times more complicated, right, than the kettle analogy. I love that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, but it's just to get people into what is a calorie. You see, calorie has no weight. It's not a thing. It's a unit of measurement, you see. So the other thing I was going to say is we all look at mass completely different. Now, if you get on a scale here, right, in your house there, you will weigh whatever you weigh, 190 pounds, okay? If you get on your scale and you did it on the moon, you would weigh 1/6 of that. Well, hang on a minute. You haven't burnt up hundreds and thousands of calories. You've just traveled to the moon where the gravity is different, but your mass is still the same. You're still the same person. Your mass is the same. So you start to talk about mass as a different thing. And food has mass. And that's a big thing that everyone forgets. And I'll give you the actual figures and you will be shocked. Okay, so if you think about fat, they say fat has 9 kilocalories per gram. And carbohydrates has 4, and so does protein. Okay. So what that means is that fat is going to, if you went by calories, is going to weigh over half less.
Yeah.
Because it's 9 kilocalories per gram. So you're going to have at least double the amount of carbohydrates to get to the same weight. All right. You could look at it like that. So if you do the calculation and you look at the weight of food or the mass of food, and you have your 30% protein and 70% fat, for instance, or you have 30% protein and 70% carbs, if you did it by calories, this carbs and protein would weigh more. So the actual weight of food is more, the mass of food. And this is why calories are ridiculous, because over the year, if you take the theoretical 2,500 calories per day and you looked at the actual weight of food you were eating and you would calorie for calorie, if you did it with carbs, over the year, you will eat 177 kilograms more food by mass over the whole year. So your body has to process 177 kilograms by mass of food. And we look at it all wrong. You see that? So that's really important, because mass, I could drink this water that has mass. I could drink that. It has no calories. I could drink that and my weight will go up. So that's why I get into this. We've got to look at mass. We've got to look at what is an actual calorie. You can't eat calories. There's no such thing as edible calories, because when I did my video on YouTube, a lot of people said, yeah, but you're not talking about edible calories. There's no such thing. A calorie, to use the other side's parlance, is a calorie. Yeah, it's a measurement of heat. You can't eat heat. You could lay in the sun and get calories on you because it's heat. It will warm your body temperature up, but your weight is not going to change. So it's a ridiculous way. It's a ridiculous metric. And then if you go into the other thing, which is when you look at the mass of food, what does it do? Well, protein builds structures. So if you are a calories person and you're looking at energy in versus energy out, which is what they always talk about, because they say thermodynamics. Thermo means heat. Dynamics is movement. So if you're into working out in the gym, you know what a dynamic stretch is. It's a stretch with movement. So we know that thermo, heat, dynamics is the movement of heat. So thermodynamics have got nothing to do with it. It's pointless saying that that's something to do with edible calories. I mean, I've really had that comment a few times. A calorie is a measurement of heat. It's really that simple. And you can lose weight by going to the toilet. You can lose weight by sweating because it's mass. That simple enough? Do you want a bit more, or is that enough?
No, that's great. That's totally simple, because I don't think I can hear it enough different ways. Every time I hear a new analogy, it's like another light bulb goes off, because this goes completely against everything that we've thought our entire lives and the way that the entire world looks at nutrition. And so looking at food more for what's actually in this food and what does the science actually say and what does the data actually support. I mean, these are the kind of conversations that people need to hear more often. This is the kind of stuff that people need to know. And so thanks so much for your time and for your willingness to be able to share that analogy on our show. It really, really means that.
But to me, it seems so obvious. If you are 100 pounds, right, and you eat 2 pounds of food, theoretically, you're going to gain 2 pounds. If you eat a pound of food, you're going to gain 1 pound. So once you start talking about mass and looking at it that way, and this is why when they say, oh, it's 9 kilocalories per gram for fat, therefore it's really bad for you because it's got all these calories. Well, hang on a minute. How much does that weigh? It weighs, its mass actually is much, much less. So you do 9 calories from carbohydrates, it's going to weigh more. It's going to weigh 2 and a bit more. So there you go. I mean, if you're on a scale and I gave you 6 kilogram dumbbell, your weight on that scale is going to go up 6 kilograms. So if you eat 6 kilograms of food, your weight is going to go up, all right, temporarily, by 6 kilograms. So why not have the mass entering your body that's a lot less? So there's different ways of looking at it, but the biggest way is to look at, well, what actually is this metric? And this metric has no weight to it. Calories do not weigh anything. 1,000 kilocalories is heat, and that weighs nothing, absolutely weighs nothing. So
yeah, wonderful. Great. Thank you again for that. And those videos, we're totally going to link those in the show notes below. Where's the best place for people to find you, sir?
Well, my website is theukcarnivore.com.
Awesome. All right. I think we should give this man a proper introduction. Is that okay, everybody? All right. Welcome to episode 136 of the supersetyourlife.com podcast. Today, or tonight in his case, we have Stephen Thomas, host of the UK Carnivore Experience. Stephen is a carnivore and keto coach himself, specializing mainly in obesity and diabetes. He is also a personal trainer and a qualified phlebotomist. Didn't know that. Wow. Okay. So we're going to get along great because I'm a meathead and he's one of the leading carnivore and nutrition experts in this space. And yet we both eat the same way. Stephen was kind enough to interview both my wife and myself on separate occasions recently. You can catch those interviews on his YouTube channel and all other major podcast platforms. I'll put a link to those in the show notes as well. And of course, reflecting on our conversations, there's a lot of questions that I now have concerning my own health and that of our clients. Proverbs 15:22 teaches that plans fail when there is no counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. Stephen is among the many valued advisors that we consult with on a regular basis, along with Professor Barkay, Dr. Sean Baker, Danny Conway, and a number of other carnivore nutritionists that have helped us to fine-tune and continue to improve upon our keto carnivore bodybuilding coaching, more so lately with an emphasis on long-term aesthetics and total body optimization. We are honored for his eagerness to share his expertise and personal experience here on our show. Stephen, welcome back to the show, mate.
Hi, nice to see you again.
Nice.
And thank you for throwing that calories question at me first thing. Yeah, I think sometimes it's nice to get straight to a question. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because this morning I was like, everything that we're going to talk about is great, but I was like, if there's one thing that everybody needs to hear right now, it's that. So let's just have another angle at it before we dive into everything that we were talking about in the first place. So how did the carnivore diet begin for you, man?
Right. Oh, that's a big question. So I will go back a bit further before carnivore and talk about my keto and also my low carb journey. So when I started out in my life, I was a semi-professional soccer player. I've won a singles tournament in tennis, so quite sporty, and I was definitely high carb. And I did a bodybuilding show in my 20s. I'm a one and done, I'm afraid, but I really enjoyed it. It was good experience. But I don't think that percentage of body fat is particularly healthy, but we'll talk about that later. That's aesthetics, which I'm cool with, by the way. But anyway, so the point being, I was pretty athletic, didn't smoke, didn't drink. All right. So I was the perfect poster boy for the healthy diet of skim milk, freshly squeezed orange juice, porridge oats in the morning, tons of fruit, and not having red meat and not having fat. I should have been the poster boy because I didn't do anything bad. I did absolutely everything by the food guidelines. Even when I was 40, I mean, I was middle distance running. I've got medals for running. I've done half marathons. I was doing mile sprints, really fit, active, personal trainer, training an Olympic athlete in my personal training life. But I was getting tubbier. I was getting pre-diabetic. I had lower left quadrant pain. I lost both my parents, by the way, who didn't have any red meat or fat. My mum died of colon cancer. My dad died of a different disease, but they ate healthy and died very young. But anyway, I believed at that point, oh, maybe it's genetic. This is it. My dad had problems. My mum also had a heart attack. So I thought, oh, maybe it's genetic. Of course, I'm now, next month, I'll be 59. And I realized now it wasn't genetic. It was probably diet.
59?
So, yeah.
I had no idea. You're looking good for 59. I'm sorry to cut you off.
That's okay. That's okay. I didn't think I'd see 59, but that's the point of the story, actually. So when I get to 40 and I get this lower left quadrant pain and I have a colonoscopy, I'm sitting there thinking, well, my mum had colon cancer. You know, this is my genetics. This is a problem. So even then, in my 40s, I did not think it was food until I started to want to be more qualified. So I decided to take my advanced personal training thing and build on that and become a specialist practitioner in obesity and diabetes. I was really interested in trying to get people to be fit and healthy. I will get to my carnivore answer in a second, but without this context, it makes no sense. So that was it. And the diabetic side, I started because I was from outside of the medical profession. I had lots of questions that seemed sensible to me, but were absolutely shouted down by people that had preconceived ideas. For instance, they were talking about the dosage of insulin, and every single medication was in relation to carbohydrates. So I kept putting my hand up saying, surely if you need a medication for this one nutrient, maybe if we reduce that, then we can reduce the medication. Seems sense to me, but no, that makes no sense apparently. But it triggered enough in my mind to think, well, this seems wrong to me. It does seem wrong to me. And of course, I was training people and I was not getting the results that I really like to see. And I knew these people were compliant. I knew they were eating the right way, and losing weight was difficult, or they would have lost weight with Weight Watchers and then gained it all back and some, and all this sort of stuff. So it started to actually become obvious to me what was going on. And then when I did my obesity part of that specialist practitioner thing, we started talking about insulin. I've got Guyton's medical physiology textbook there, which talks about insulin and the fact that in the presence of insulin, you can't burn fat. And it all started to lock together. And then the icing on the cake was qualifying as a phlebotomist as well and doing bloods. And I was able to look at the body more as a physiological organism, and all of it locked in that the carbohydrates were a bit of a problem. I then decided that I would also do my honours degree in science in physiology and health sciences. So it all just came together and I got all the qualifications. And to me, it made absolute sense to try it myself. So I went low carb at age 50. And I had a ton of stuff that absolutely got better straight away. First thing, yeah, you lose some water weight, but I also lost body fat. My body composition just improved dramatically. Little things that you don't sort of think about at the time, like athlete's foot, which I'd had for 40 years, that disappeared. And I had tried every single medication, cream, biohack, duct tape, whatever. I've tried everything to get rid of it. Talcum powder in my socks, really drying in between my toes. Didn't work. Low carb basically started to get rid of it. I used to have a big rash here on my forehead, like someone had got a big strawberry and pushed it against my head. That started to go. But the biggest things were being pre-diabetic. That absolutely stopped. Stone dead. That absolutely reversed very, very quickly. Lower left quadrant pain completely removed itself. I had a coronary artery calcium scan at the beginning of all this, and it was 639. So I had categoric proof that the way I was eating, the skim milk, no fat, no red meat, I'm not eating a ribeye till I was 55. You know, all the stuff that you're supposed to eat was rubbish. So I did low carb, and I continued to do that for a few years. And then I had a sort of parallel existence, starting to watch people like Ken Berry, who at that point was telling you to eat your greens and stuff. And he started to become more keto. And it was just coincidental that I was thinking about going keto, and I was watching people like Eric Berg. And I know that makes people laugh, but I still think he's great as a gateway into getting away from the standard American diet. Thomas DeLure, and quite a few influencers like that. At this point, I had not encountered.
Where I started out too. Sorry.
Oh, cool.
There. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'd not. Sorry to admit this. I'd never even heard of Joe Rogan or Sean Baker at this point. So anyway, I get to 55, and I do hear about Joe Rogan, and I do hear about Sean Baker, and I get so interested in carnivore. So I've got to your question now at last. I decide to train at MeatRx to be an online coach, try it myself, obviously, first. So I did that, and the results were astonishing, absolutely astonishing. And I'll get into sort of training in a minute, because all throughout this period of my life, I've always worked out. I've actually just ended an experiment where I didn't work out since August. So I don't know if you knew that, but I'd trained all my life, and I wanted to prove that you could not train for a long period of time and then get back into it and get back to fitness. Because a lot of the people that I coach, one of the big excuses is, well, I haven't trained ever. I can never do this. Well, I can't replicate that. And some people say, oh, well, I used to train, but I haven't for a long time. So that's going to be a problem. So I wanted to prove that you can get back into it. So 55, I've become carnivore. All these things go really good. I get into a different sort of training as well. So as a PT, I used to believe in sets and reps and all that. And I don't now. I believe in working out to fatigue and timed training and much less volume.
Bro, you're gonna kill my logbook sales, man.
Sorry, mate.
I'm just kidding. I write it down half the reason, because just like people that track their calories, I'm like, man, I did this many sets of chin-ups for 12 reps. Yeah, and it's just kind of a win that I needed to feel today. But I know what you're saying on the science. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, but it's a different thing because I do it timed and to physique. So
Yeah.
it's still looking at parameters.
Oh, you're 100% right. 100%.
Yeah, and working. You've got to work hard. I mean, it's not going to come easy. But at 58, I gained 9 pounds of muscle before I did my experiment, and it was the easiest gain for that amount of muscle in a year ever, and that was with the X3 bar. I'm not an affiliate. I have no commission on it, but I thought that was a game changer for me. Absolutely game changer. And dead hanging was one of the things as well. I think that's particularly underrated. It really is good for strength and your kinetic chain.
I call it a monkey grip hang because I'm hanging by the ends of my fingertips. My whole body feels great after I do that exercise.
Yeah, good. And so I'm just very open-minded to everything from the phlebotomy side. When I did the carnivore experiment, which was going to be 30 days, within 30 days, my testosterone went up 30%. So natural, completely natural.
I'm smiling. I just don't look surprised because because I know what the carnivore diet does.
and that's the thing. So I mean, it was, and going back to how I coach people, when it used to be really difficult, when I was a high carb personal trainer, now as an online coach, it's much easier to get good results, real reversals in diseases and stuff like that. It's a much more enjoyable life as a carnivore coach because you get the results and you see the results and you feel it yourself. So that's my journey. That is my journey there, I suppose, in a nutshell. Bit of a long story, but everything I've learned.
It's a powerful story, is what it is.
Has been very helpful.
Yeah, and thank you for helping us out and for sharing that on our show. On your coaching notes, see, I had a question there that I just wanted to ask you. I'm sorry, let me pull it up real quick. So when you got someone that's coming to you and saying, "Hey, I'm eating a standard American diet right now, and I want to make a transition to the carnivore diet." Okay, we use a cold turkey approach because people know us as carnivores, so like they kind of know what they're getting in for, and like especially being bodybuilders and stuff, it's like. This is what we teach, and yeah, I can train you on a high carb diet, but because I have even more experience doing that before becoming a carnivore myself. But when it comes to getting someone transition from point A to where they're eating, basically everything if it fits your macros or whatever, to the far extreme, which is kind of like more like you and me, which is where we're eating more or less meat and salt and thriving that way. Instead of going cold turkey, do you use more of a gradual approach, or what does that usually look like for you?
It's individual, and it depends on their metabolic health when they turn up. It depends on what their family is like or anyone around them, because if you're a single person, it's a lot easier to transition because you're not feeding other people or sitting down and eating with other people. You haven't got kids or whatever. So it's very individual. In fact, everything I do is about the individual. I don't think there are sort of preset limits. You can say, well, look at this sort of amount of food as an average, but we're all very different. So I think if someone is an addictive sort of person, or they need that strict, you can't eat that type of thing, then you would be a bit more hardcore and a bit more sort of let's go straight for it. But other people need that small transition because they might have problems, GI tract issues, where going cold turkey might actually give them a couple of weeks of not the best existence, if you know what I mean. So some people just need to slowly
and you know what, can you I know you're trying to beat around the bush, but can you like say exactly what you wanted to say there?
Well, very explosive visits to the toilet or constipation that is unbearable. The diarrhea can be quite problematic in social situations. It's a bit embarrassing. So I think it depends on the person's health.
Like you got to make up a real good story real quick.
Yeah, it just depends. It just depends on the person. But I think for most people, they really want to jump straight in. I think that's the thing. So I'm not adverse to saying, yeah, let's go for it. as long as you're okay that, maybe you're going to have some constipation, you might have a bit of diarrhea, terrible phrase, like keto flu or something. You don't want to put people off. That's the thing. If you feel that they're a bit fragile, because there are people out there that can't cope with those sort of big changes in their toilet habits. So we poop less, don't we, when we're a carnivore, because there's less waste. And some people find just that simple thing.
Like
I need to go
twice a day. You don't have to poop out all the garbage that you were eating in the first place.
Yes. And going back to that difference in weight of the food, the mass of the food, you're eating so much more with carbohydrates. You're eating so much more that's not digestible and rubbish. So you're giving your body much less to deal with. And the stuff you're putting in is good. The thing is, I just want to point something out. We always talk about macronutrients as if there are 3 macronutrients: fats, proteins, and carbohydrates. And again, I'm going to just talk about the word. Macro just means big, and nutrient means, the nutrients you're getting. So when someone says to me, well, there are 3 macronutrients, I said, well, not for me. I have 2, because I don't have any carbs. And if I did have carbs, and I had a small amount of carbs, that's actually a micronutrient. So I think the word macros or macronutrients is a bit misleading, because it makes it sound like those 3 things are absolutely sort of equal and essential, but they're not. It's just describing the fact that you're getting a lot of nutrients from protein. So therefore, that's a macronutrient. You're getting a lot of nutrients from fat. So that's your macronutrient. That's it. So I think when we talk about macros, it sort of rubs me up the wrong way, because it's worded in such a way. So when you say, well, let's drop the carbs to minimal, people will often say, well, isn't that one of the essential macronutrients? And I say, well, it's not essential. And when you eat a little amount, it's not a macronutrient, it's a micronutrient. So, I think the way the food is sold to us is very important, the words around it. And I think that's another thing. I try to educate people to take a step back and think, well, what you've been told, and this is answering a transition thing, I have to get people to look at food in a different way, because what they've been told and what the reality is are 2 different things.
100%. Thank you so much for that. Can we take a step back just a little bit to diarrhea? Can we talk about that a little bit more?
What do you want to know?
Okay. The reason is because, and we're on your time right now too. So whenever you say, hey, I got to get ready for my interview with Mr. Robert Sykes, go ahead, because low key. Okay, well, it's definitely not low key because we're saying it on a podcast now. But listeners, we have a bit of a scheduling mix up because of like daylight saving times and stuff. And as a show host, I found myself in a pickle. I was like, okay, I have a meeting at this time and I have another meeting at this time, and neither of these meetings can move. And Coach Stephen is like, it's Robert Sykes that we're going to be interviewing. And I'm like, oh man. So anyway, I'm excited to see that one when it drops, bro. For sure. And everybody listening should better be subscribed to Stephen's show, because you're going to want to catch that one when it comes out. But yeah, going back to diarrhea, the reason I wanted to bring that up was because we have several questions that came in like last minute for this interview, but one of them was on that topic. And so this is a case that I would kind of like to troubleshoot and just run by you, just a scenario, if that's all right. Okay. So this gal, Jordan Buffner, she was on our show about 6 or 7 episodes ago too, actually. Started off with us about 3 or 4 months ago, 94 pounds and about 30-35 years old. I'm sorry. So somewhere around there. Got some young kids, and very underweight. Since then, she's gained 10 pounds. It looks to be 100% muscle. I mean, we haven't done an actual test to see exactly how much muscle it is, but her conditioning looks great before and after pictures. Problem is she's been experiencing a lot of that. a lot of unfriendly explosive shifts in the bathroom, if you want to call it that. So this gal here, we reintroduced sweet potatoes into her diet. She's been otherwise carnivore ever since. The reason that we put sweet potatoes in was because I figured that it was the best carb source that would do the least amount of damage to her body, knowing that carbs are toxic to the human body in general, if we really want to think of it that way. And then what that did was it fixed her constipation, but then she's experiencing more inflammation and she's not feeling as well. So as soon as she takes it back out, the diarrhea comes back. I'm not sure if you've heard of that one or had any
Well, yeah, because
situations or similar.
yeah. I mean, because that's not fixing the diarrhea, that's actually changing the fluid balance. So when you eat carbohydrates, what you're doing is you're changing the fluid balance. And obviously, if you have diarrhea, then your stool normally contains too much fluid or too much water. That does depend on what's causing it. It could be too much fat, malabsorption of fats. So when you put carbs in, and this is one of the things when people do put carbs in, a few things happen. So for every molecule of glucose, you have 3 molecules of water. So what suddenly happened there is you've eaten some sweet potato and you've sucked up some water that isn't going to end up in the stool. So you get this temporary fix where it's not being flushed out, but that's not fixed it. So you stop the carbohydrates and you get the diarrhea back.
So it's kind of like putting a Band-Aid on it, basically, is what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's many things that we can talk about because carbohydrates do things to insulin and they do things to fluid balance and they do things to electrolytes. So they seem to sort of work, but actually you take them out and it doesn't. So you have to look at, well, what is causing the diarrhea? Well, there's a few things. There's a few things you could look at. Is there an infection?
It's usually an indicator of too much fat, right?
Yeah, it could be malabsorption of fat. So you could be eating a bit too much fat that's causing loose stools. But normally what happens is then all the stool floats as well, and you could tell. There could be an intolerance going on. That's another one. But it could also be the fact that you're emptying too quickly. So the motility. So peristalsis needs to be about 11 waves per minute, and some people it's a bit too fast. So you could be having a stimulant like caffeine, for instance, will move you too much. You could be doing too much activity, and that could be just moving it along and transiting. So it's not sitting in the colon and water's not being reabsorbed. Could also be sort of an overhang from too much fiber in the past, and that is just a case of being a bit patient. So if you've come from a diet where you've had a lot of fiber, what has been happening in the colon, the fiber is still sort of there. We know that plant material is the thing that sticks around in the colon, because when you have nurses talk to you about colostomy bags, it's always plant material. It's always plant material you see in the toilet, that sort of thing. So fiber could be literally coating the colon and artificially helping you at first. And then once you've stopped eating fiber, your osmotic, your basically your water balance is not quite right, because all of a sudden the colon is clear. So you just have to ride it out, which is what we were talking about transition here, you see. So I think you would have been better to, possibly look at fluid intake. So don't drink so much water. So this 8 glasses of water myth is terrible. You need to drink to thirst and use your urine as your guide. So urine should be straw colored. If it is clear, you are drinking too much water. And if it's dark, you're not drinking enough. It really is that simple.
Wow. Okay. Because in high school, they always tell you it's got to look just like water, right?
Well, if it looks like water, it is just water. Urine is waste. It is a waste product, okay? And it should not be water. It should be straw colored. It should look like something that your body has excreted out. If it's clear, definitely you're drinking too much. So your urine is a brilliant needle to watch to make sure your fluid intake is absolutely correct. There's a few really great studies. Tim Noakes did a great book about waterlogged. If you start looking at performance athletes, there is a physiological advantage to being slightly dehydrated compared to being overhydrated. Mm-hmm. Overhydration is absolutely much more dangerous and causes problems like diarrhea. So you could look at your fluid intake. You could look at stimulants. You could look at things that are making the motility of the stomach speed up. So caffeine is a big problem there. Stress is also another thing that can speed up the emptying. So if you go to real basics, you see you've got the transit of food and then you've got the production of waste. You've got urea being produced and feces. And when it goes into the colon, when you talk about feces, it goes up and across, transverse, and then down. During that period of time, there's the reabsorption of fluids, and you get back some electrolytes. So you could even be looking at somebody drinking too much water, therefore flushing out electrolytes as well. So the electrolyte imbalance is problematic. There's so many ways to fix it. So I probably would need to meet on a 1-to-1 or look at look at the fluid intake, look at whether there's any stimulants, whether there's any infections or intolerance as well. So if there's dairy in there and you have a little bit of lactose intolerance, or you have gluten intolerance, if they have some carbs still in there, that, or like breads or something, that can cause diarrhea. Medications as well, you could look at the insert of any meds they're on, and if there's a side effect of diarrhea, then it could just simply be the medications. So there's tons of things that you could look at. Sorry to be very vague, but I start with the easy things like
no. You're bringing up so many things that I haven't considered yet, and so I'm just writing down. Okay, that's something we need to talk about. That's something we need to address. And I'll just say, guess who I'm getting on the phone with as soon as we're done with this recording. I mean, obviously, it's the meeting that I was supposed to be having right now, so we're texting right now, and she's totally cool with it. But back to Jordan. Yeah, no. So she's gonna listen to that, and then we're gonna rendezvous and go over everything together and sync and troubleshoot that a bit more. So that's okay. Awesome. Yeah, no, that was absolutely perfect. Thank you so much for that. Speaking of Critzy, I was like, hey, we're talking to Stephen right now. And so Stephen would like to ask, what is your favorite carnivore recipe, Stephen?
Right. Well, my favorite thing is ribeye. So that's one of the joys.
When you were 50 years old, you were like, where has this been all my life?
yeah, exactly. That's one of the joys, I think, of carnivore is so simple. I'm sorry to be really boring, but basically we had an air fryer, and then we've upgraded to a Ninja air fryer, and I think a ribeye in that. I mean, that's how food should come. It's just the whole food, and it's beautiful. Recipe, if I was trying to think of something that takes a little bit of processing, I really am struggling because most things
just taste good by itself.
Yeah, it just tastes, black scrambled egg, that's got a bit of processing in it, but
I know we just did our first meal prep video yesterday, and so far, like it's the last video on our YouTube channel, Skullbellz TV, and I just asked everybody, I was like, what's your opinion on this? Like, I feel like an idiot saying all this, but like, this is just how to cook meat and salt. I mean, it's really, really good. And so I just spent a lot of time on the salt. I'm like, okay, this is why we're using this salt and not this salt. All right. And like, I don't know what else to say. It's really good, but you don't really get to that point if you're eating all these other processed foods and throwing off your satiety signals, and your body's just you got to give your body the right fuel. And then from there, you get in tune with those satiety signals. And then your own body will tell you what to eat, how much to eat. And it's like everything tastes different.
Yeah, I think, I suppose, scallops in a creamy sauce, pretty good. But again, that's all it is, scallops and cream. That's it.
Exactly. Speaking of carbs, you touched on that a little bit earlier. And let's see, carb cravings. I figured that'd be a good segue into Osama's question. So this is actually a fun fact. I've been training him for 4 years. So he's officially our longest client. A soft spot in my heart for this gentleman. But he goes, maybe ask him if there's ever a time that he thinks carbs should be included. Is there ever a time where you would recommend, oh yeah, this person should have carbs because of this?
No.
I love that answer because I agree with you.
I mean, yeah. I think some people just maybe in their head think they need them. But I think if you're fully fat adapted, there's no place for them. One of the things I would say, I'm trying to give you good value here because I don't think just saying no is very good. If you look at influencers that are really into carbs, they will often say, hey, look at this. Your body needs carbs because it does this. It needs glucose to run the brain. And that's all true. But you don't need dietary carbohydrates. You need carbohydrates. You need glucose to run your brain. Approximately, I think it's 120 grams of glucose over a 24-hour period for your brain. So that's about 5 grams per hour, about a teaspoon of sugar. But your liver delivers that. And I think that's the biggest thing when we talk about gluconeogenesis, which is just glucose, neogenesis, new making of glucose. It's demand driven. So it's the exact dose that you need. So there you go. I think that's the best way to do it. So if you ever see any influencer saying, hey, you definitely need glucose. Yeah, you need glucose. That's without a doubt. At night, when you're not eating, your liver is making glucose. That's absolutely true. But you don't need to eat any. And you can make enough glucose out of non-carbohydrate substrate, so you can make it out of proteins and fats. So you don't need them. I can't honestly think of one situation where I would recommend adding carbs back.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, great. Well, and I want to stay on topic, but you mentioned a term called gluconeogenesis, and so I can't help but go a little bit deeper into that. Okay, so if there's never, because I agree with you on everything you said, by the way. So thank you so much. I'm glad that we're on the same page there. So when it gets to gluconeogenesis and consuming more protein than what your body requires, so that it becomes glucose through gluconeogenesis, which is not a high-fat diet, it's not a keto diet, it's not really a high-carb diet, but it's kind of like a high-carb diet. It's a kind of a category of its own in the middle, right? Is there ever a point where you would recommend somebody over-consuming protein to get some of those same benefits from carbs, even though they're not consuming carbs in and of themselves?
Well, I have an issue with over consuming protein. That's very difficult to do. The 13 grams per meal is absolutely a myth. I mean, there's studies where they've looked at people on 20 grams up to 40 grams of protein per meal, and the 40 grams always perform better. That's in studies. And 100 grams per meal of protein, again, studies on that, athletic studies showing that that's fine. So it's difficult to have too many amino acids, too much protein coming in. And really, you have actually opened a can of worms here, because when you eat protein, one of the things you need, and people don't seem to get this, is you need bile to do the full digestion of amino acids. So most people think bile emulsifies fats, which it does, but it also helps and aids in the assistance of amino acid digestion. So when you're looking at, for instance, let's get back into your wheelhouse, and you're trying to build muscle, man. Yeah. Well, muscle, yes, you need amino acids, you need protein. I'll get to gluconeogenesis in a second, but I just want to nail this for people out there, and then we'll talk about the gluconeogenesis effect, alleged effect of it. So the amino acids are going to build cross bridges in your muscles, and the fibers of your muscles are going to grow because of the protein synthesis, but they all have membranes. What do membranes have? They have fats. So if you have just pure protein, you are not helping your muscle, because if you're not helping the membranes, you're not helping your muscle, which is why you should have fats with protein. That's absolutely essential. Also, because when you eat the fat and protein together, you will produce the bile that's needed for the digestion. So that's the first thing. Second, right, too much protein, very difficult, but let's pretend that is a real thing. Why does that produce gluconeogenesis?
I was going to say, man, you and I need to go to a buffet someday, and I'll disprove that myth real quick.
Well, what I just said, you'll disprove it, will you?
I was just going to say that I'll overconsume more steak than you think is possible. I'm definitely capable of that. No, so, I agree with you on the science, though.
Okay, so when you eat protein, what happens is, I'm prepared to debate anything. So when you eat protein, people think your blood glucose goes up because of gluconeogenesis, because you've eaten too much protein, but that's actually not what is really happening. So what's happening? You're eating that protein, and it takes 5 times the amount of energy to process the protein that does, say, carbs or fats.
Yeah.
So what's actually happening is your body is potentially going to be hypoglycemic. And I've learned this from my diabetes studies and phlebotomy. What happens? You get a glucagon response to stop your body going to be hypoglycemic. So this is a big deal for diabetic type 1s especially. So when that protein goes in, that is not eliciting gluconeogenesis directly. It's not saying this protein is now turning into sugar, but it looks like that, because what happens is it actually instigates the release of glucagon, and glucagon will then speak to the liver and release blood sugar. But it isn't like a direct, too much protein, we're making sugar. It's protein, it's being processed to go to the amino acid pools, it's being digested. It's taking up
there's a lot more hoops that it has to go through to get
there. Yeah. And so glucagon then says, right, okay, we're potentially going to be hypoglycemic, so therefore we need to put the blood sugar up.
Yeah.
That's the actual mechanism. Okay. But if you could look at it simplistically and say, right, we're obviously eating too much protein. So I will get to your thing there. You're possibly eating too much protein because it's going to push you hypoglycemic, But luckily, we have a fail-safe, which is the instigation of glucagon to push up the gluconeogenesis to make sure the blood glucose goes back up. So I don't think it's wasted. And this is where these studies are really interesting, because they literally said there seems to be no upper limit to protein consumption. That's what they said. They said it's possible we could have gone 10 times and not seen a wastage of the amino acid. So I think there's a bit more nuance to what is out there.
Yeah.
But yes, you could say, I've eaten a lot of protein, my blood glucose has gone up, so therefore that's turned into sugar, but that isn't really what happens.
Right. Okay. Yeah, because my strategy had been throughout the last, which now I don't do and I don't recommend anymore, especially after this conversation is for sure sealing the deal on this. But about a month and a half ago, I felt like an absolute idiot talking to Bart K on that subject about intentionally over consuming protein to be able to achieve some of the same performance benefits that I had experienced in the past with a high carbohydrate diet. And so the only goal that I was looking to achieve was to fill out and to retain more water so I could be bigger and so I could be healthier, or excuse me, not healthier. Health wasn't really the first thing on my mind at that point. I'm trying to win this show, right? And so I know that the judges, I've got about everybody out conditioned, but if I lose to anybody, it's going to be strictly because of mass. So going back to our mass conversation earlier, I'm like, what's going to make me retain mass? Okay. Over consuming protein for sure will do that. And so it created obviously an insulin spike and a lot of the things that we try to avoid when it comes to carbohydrates. So still much healthier than a high carbohydrate diet. And then when that gluconeogenesis took place, that's how I was able to gain literally another 4 or 5 pounds overnight from doing one show to where I knew what I did wrong and then needed to fill out more because that's what the judges were looking for, more so than conditioning. But since then, I haven't done that. So my protein has been just a little higher than my lean body mass. So basically what I weigh right now, which is like kind of around 200 pounds. And I can't tell you how much better I feel overall with less inflammation. And I'm eating about 500 grams of fat a day right now too. So I know that's like crazy high for most people, but still maintaining my conditioning on it. And even though it's a lot different than what I was used to, I'm so glad that I had that conversation with him and with you for explaining it to me that way, because now I understand and I can feel a difference between something that my body really doesn't feel like it's designed to do versus a way that right now feels like it's really thriving and banging on all cylinders.
Yeah, and I mean that's the definition of too much, is how your body deals with it. And this is why I don't like the prescriptive 1 gram of protein for 1 pound of lean body mass, or the 1.75 grams per kilogram, because that's just a launching point. That's a really good starting point. But then, if you look at bodybuilders, they're not going for like you say for health. They're going for aesthetics, so they want body fat, which is much lower than is probably healthy. I know it's only dipping in for a short period of time. Mm-hmm. So I think that's what I was trying to say, is too much is when your body doesn't cope with it.
Yeah.
It's not an actual quantity. The reason I use the amounts in the studies is because many people say there is an absolute limit of 30 grams of protein per meal, and that's not true, because that does not factor in someone that's 4 foot, someone that's 6 foot, someone's active.
That's like my first bite of a meal.
Yeah. So I think that's the thing. It's more about your physiology and how you react to it. And if you're really good at absorbing protein and you're metabolically healthy, you possibly need less, because you're making more of it. You're using it very quickly, and you're getting that protein synthesis if you train. Like I say, your bile production is up to speed. There's so many more things other than just what type of protein and how much. I think it's all to do with the individual and everything.
Hey everyone, Coach Taylor Milton here. Welcome to Skullbellz TV, the official YouTube channel of supersetyourlife.com, where you're going to discover a weekly upload of quick and easy to follow workout tutorials featuring Coach Colt, myself, or one of our athletes to keep your workouts fun, practical, and effective. our family's latest keto carnivore recipes that fuel Colt's competitions and keep myself and our kiddos strong and healthy. Video uploads of the supersetyourlife.com podcast, now over 100 episodes, your weekly dose of entertainment, education, and inspiration to fuel your life inside and beyond the gym, and much more. Last thing before we get into the video, we're asking a big favor from you. This has been working beautifully, so if you would please think of someone you care about that would benefit from this video, go ahead and smash that like button, click the share button, and text this video to them. That would mean the world to us. And while you're at it, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss more exciting content from Skullbellz TV, because our team has lots of meat and lots of muscle coming your way, and I promise you won't want to miss it. When you hit the subscribe button, you'll see a bell icon pop up. You want to click that too so you're notified every time we release a new video. Thank you so much for the support. It means the world to us. Every like, share, and subscription helps our channel grow and supports our family's hard work. So thank you so much for doing your part too. That's all we ask. God bless you, and please enjoy this video.
This one is from Matt's, and I think, yeah, I'm like 99% sure this guy lives in Ireland. So that's like right across the river from you, right? or a sound or something. Anyway, he goes, how was Stephen able to start tolerating fish after being allergic to it for a long time?
Wow, that's someone who knows my history. Yeah,
and then actually he goes, nothing more, to be honest. I've listened to him quite a bit and I've seen a lot of his videos.
Ah, that's good. Well, I'd love to tell you the mechanism, but I think it's just to reduce systemic inflammation. I think, and I just have better responses. My mast cell histamine response has improved. The physiology of my body has improved so much that things that I thought I couldn't tolerate, I can now tolerate. So, Colt, I don't think you know this, but basically up until I was 50, I could not eat any shellfish, any seafood whatsoever. Hospitalized twice. Once it was so bad, my face blew up so much, they were sending junior doctors in to look at me and look at, point and laugh and go, wow, you look terrible. What did you do? And I had a fish cake about this big, and terrible reaction. And I noticed on low carb, because it was so bad, I couldn't go anywhere where they were even selling fish. The smell was that bad. If I stood there, I started to itch and get watery eyes and stuff like that. And I lived in Rye by the sea, which was great. And I went to Japan and all these fish. And it's not a nice thing to have this allergic reaction. But what I noticed as I went low carb and then when I went keto is these places didn't make me feel like that. I wasn't having itchy eyes and stuff. And when I used to train in my 20s, when I did the bodybuilding show, my training partner, we were both natural, and he used to have tuna and white rice. And I was really jealous because I thought tuna was a great source of protein. And I was stuck with my chicken without skin on and white rice. He incidentally went on to be a Mr. England competitor, in the natural bodybuilding. So I had this great training partner, and I was jealous of what he could, what he could eat there. And I always wanted to eat tuna. But anyway, I couldn't. So anyway, I get into low carb. And then when I get to keto, I feel, maybe I could try something. So did the old test, rubbed it on my lip and had a little bit, and I could tolerate it, and it was great. And I now can eat all fish apart from cod. I mean, I can have sea bass and scallops and prawns and shrimp and crab and so many things. Oysters, fantastic oysters for zinc and all that. And, I'm really pleased, and it's a good source of protein. I know Paul Saladino doesn't like it for the mercury, but I don't eat lots of fish, and I always get freshly caught. And I like sardines. Obviously, they're right down the bottom of the sort of predator chain, so there's not much accumulation of mercury. So I think fish is really helpful. I'd love to give you the exact answer what happened. All I know is that things like hay fever. So all of my histamine, histamine response, all my inflammatory cytokines seem to be mediated a lot better with this way of eating, because I don't get hay fever anymore, and I'm not allergic to fish anymore.
Wow.
Lactose intolerance, that's gone. I can have raw milk, I can have kefir, so yeah, everything's improved.
Wow, that's amazing. That's incredible. Thank you so much for that. Another question. Susie, one of our clients, would like to just ask, I think in general, she's just asking about 50 and above. How can we ladies get the best supplementation for joint and cartilage support? Any suggestions?
That's a good question. Yeah, that's a good question. I probably need to know their history a bit better. I think the easiest thing to say is cod liver oil, actual cod liver oil. So this
nice.
is what I got. Hang on.
Yeah, that's what I supplement too, actually.
So that's got a cod liver in it, in its own oil. Okay. So that's what I have.
Is that a brand that you're affiliated with, of curiosity?
Fish are jumping. Don't forget, I'm in the UK, but I'm sure the States will have more on offer. If you can't get that, then the cod liver oil in a bottle is okay. If you can get it in a glass bottle, I think that's good. That tends to be the best thing. I would keep away from things like turmeric, which is actually inflammatory.
It is really because the word on the street here is that's why everybody around here does supplement, is because apparently it's anti-inflammatory.
I would disagree. I mean, don't forget, one of the things I did was run a rehab clinic before the restrictions. I had to stop that because in the restrictions I couldn't do one-to-one face-to-face meetings. So I don't even like it. I've just been supplementing because I thought it was supposed to help with inflammation. So that's one of those things that has to go. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, but then you have to really take it with pepperine, and that brings a whole set of other problems, and to make it bioavailable. So I mean, but why do that when you can get cod liver oil and get much more bang for your buck? So that's quite good. So with joint pain, motion is lotion. That's a corny thing to say, but if you can do the right motions, if you've got pains in your hands, for instance, a lot of people recommend you pull a fist, but that's not really good. You sort of want to just do that with your fingers. If you've got pains in your fingers, don't do that. It's a big difference because you're looking at the extensors and all that working differently. Movement is good. It's not this no pain, no gain. Don't make yourself hurt. Just push to the edge. So say, for instance, your shoulder is hurting doing that. You just want to keep that motion, but not go, I'm going to go past that where it's telling me not to do it. You could look at things like vitamin D3, but of course that's going to be tick boxed with the cod liver oil. You could look at K2 or MK7.
Sorry. Yeah. Quick question on the vitamin D3. I have a pharmaceutical version and a plant-based. It's from a mushroom extract, not the mushrooms that you're thinking of. But okay. So non-hallucinogenic mushrooms. Right. So one of them is like more natural, and one of them is like more made in a lab. Do you have an opinion of which one's better?
Going out in the sun. And eating fat is the best vitamin D. If you have to take it from a supplement, then I would also include that you have some fats with it, because that's how you synthesize D3. Yeah. So
cod liver oil fasted with
cod liver oil is better. Yeah, I would just do cod liver oil once a day, and you don't have to be fasted. I mean, just whenever you can take it was convenient. Cut out seed oils if you've got any seed oils because of the omega-6. Is it right shoulder pain, did you say?
Yeah, my right shoulder has been dislocated.
Yeah, right. Well, see, right shoulder pain could be related to sort of like bile production at the moment. So you could take some bile salts and you might see that your right shoulder pain goes down. If it's to do with movement, let's say, I know my camera's on mirror, but this is my right shoulder, and your movement, you go like this and it hurts about here, just about there. What you do is you massage this side in the exact place where you're getting the pain. So let's say you get the pain there, you'd massage this side. And I've got videos on YouTube of this happening because it is like a miracle. Within 5 minutes, people that have come in and gone, I can't move beyond there. 5 minutes of massage there, the video shows them going like this. So that's nothing to do with nutrition. It's more to do with muscular issues. So yeah, there's a lot more to joint pain than just nutrition. Nutrition helps. Proper motion is the next thing.
Absolutely. All right. Holden Henderson would like to ask, he is a natural bodybuilder, 22 years old, 18 weeks out from his first natural bodybuilding competition. he texted me this morning saying, kind of thought of a thought-provoking question. What do you think of the stigma too much red meat is unhealthy? And do you think that more people are moving away from this thought process?
Well, I'd like that. Red meat being unhealthy is basically ideological. There's no studies that prove this. If you look at any studies that have any, basically, when you look at studies about red meat, they're few and far between because red meat is lumped in with processed meat. And I know this for a fact because I took part in a study, and it was really difficult for me to continue because I kept saying, I don't eat processed meat. Where is my choice to just say red meat? And there is no choice. So a lot of these observational studies that come to this conclusion, they are, there's healthy user bias. So if I'm lumped in with people that eat processed meat, I'm also lumped in with people that go to McDonald's. So those people tend not to be very fit in other areas. They might smoke, might drink more. So there's no good studies on this. There's no studies on grass-fed meat compared to, a vegan diet or vegetarian. So if you go a really big picture, the consumption of red meat has gone down certainly since the 60s. It's gone down and down and down, consumption, and all diseases have gone up. If you take a real basic, does it make sense that all these diseases are based on red meat consumption? Well, no, because there's no correlation between consumption and disease rising. So, yeah, I would love to see that people change, but I don't think they will because the ideology is trying to get you to not eat red meat. So I've got 4 minutes left, Colt. Sorry.
4 minutes left. Okay. These are going to be really, really quick then. Michael, my best friend and godfather to our daughter, he goes, "Hey, you need fiber to be healthy, right?" How would you respond? How would you answer that in like 30 seconds?
Why do you think that? Because the only real studies that have looked at fiber, the best outcomes were for the zero fiber group. So the resolution of all sort of bleeding and pain and GI issues and all those sort of things. And I would recommend you look up Dr. Paul Mason. Just search on YouTube, Dr. Paul Mason fiber, and you will find that study. I think also if you look at real world experience from everybody I know who've cut out the fiber, less gas, less toilet problems, once you've fat adapted, why would you eat something that you can't digest? What's the benefit? There is no benefit. I know the argument about the short chain fatty acids in your colon, the bacteria love it and they can ferment and they can make short chain fatty acids, but you can make short chain fatty acids from isobutyrate from a protein. So you don't need fiber.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much for that. Oh, and for whatever it's worth, you can add Colt Milton to the list of people that have experienced all those anecdotal evidences that you just described. I just told him, just stop eating it and you'll feel better and you'll figure it out too. Google it, bro. Yes. It's everywhere. Yeah. Okay. Hey everybody, thank you so much for joining us on this entire episode. If you found this helpful or entertaining, as always, please share with a friend. Totally means the world to us. And one quick thing before we wrap up, Jules, thank you so much for your review on the pink Celtic cave salt. She would like to say the pink salt that you sent is absolutely amazing. My kids love it too. Super nice of you to say. You can follow Jules on Instagram at FitGirlJules, just like it sounds. And this gal is also a comedian. She's a carnivore, she's a comedian, and she's super fit. You should totally check out her profile. I reached out to her actually and was like, hey, you're a comedian, I'm a comedian, we have a lot in common. I think we should do a podcast. So yeah, we'll try to compare our calendars like in a month or so and see if we can make it happen. But anyway, thank you again, everybody, so much for joining. Oh yeah, and then I just want to throw my 2 cents worth too, of course, me being the salt nerd, on this pink potassium cave salt. So this stuff is mined from, it's unrefined. It's what it is an unrefined, it's an unrefined ancient sea cave salt that is extracted from Catalonia, Spain. I don't know what it is about salts that are mined from caves, but they always have really high potassium levels, which is super cool because I'm always trying to make sure that my potassium levels are not as high as sodium, but up there in the same area, because when I'm getting cramps mid-workout, usually a little bit of sodium is what does the trick. It's usually a potassium deficiency, at least in my case. So anyway, this has been my potassium supplement. I'm usually putting it on pretty much all of my food at one point or another throughout the day and sipping on it just basically out of my water jug. So it's a little bit of an acquired taste, but super good stuff. Flavor profile, if you like Redmond real salt, then this basically tastes the same way. It looks the same way. And as a matter of fact, if you had them side by side, you might not be able to tell which is which. But yeah, if that's something that you like, then you probably like this one too. You can support the show by picking yourself up a box at supersetyourlife.com. Love you all so much. Thanks again for joining. We'll catch you on the next episode. Bye-bye.